This first thing, we'll just call to order. So if I say your name, you say here. Her name, first one on the list. Shay.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Fowler.
Here.
Ike.
Here.
Thank
you.
Peterson is here also. And Rolinski is absent. And Nieves is absent. All right, next item on the agenda would just be the approval of the meeting minutes from the October meeting. Give everybody a chance to look them over. If anybody has any adds or changes, suggest them now. If not, we just need a motion.
Move to approve the minutes of 10/1/19.
All right.
A second.
Second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Also say yes. And it's are approved. So we'll move on to public comment. This would be for anybody in the room that has something that's not on the agenda. If you have something you'd like to address, please just limit it to 3 minutes. Most people are applicants. All right. Then old business is next up. So the matter of 300 Washington Boulevard, it's a COA for new handrails, and Phil had a note to us here that this is really just a matter of tabling indefinitely, or taking it off the table and then tabling indefinitely. So I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, there was never a formal application made. We were trying to accommodate them before they sold the house, and they've been out of touch since the last conversation before the last meeting. So tabling it again, you're not really tabling anything officially, but I think you can just remove it from the agenda is maybe the best way to handle it.
Okay.
Because it's not a formal application at this point.
Can't we only table something so many times too?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
That's what we learned in our training, but then that was if it's a formal application, right? So
Yeah.
this one you're saying we'll just remove it from business altogether?
Yeah.
A motion to remove? Okay, from discussion.
So can I make a motion to remove?
Do it.
Support.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Also say yes. Motion passes.
Thank you.
You bet. New business. Are we going in the order that's on the agenda, or do you have a couple?
Yeah.
We are. Okay, so the first one is 328 Washington Boulevard.
Yeah, and Mr. Orta is here at the table.
Awesome.
This is an application, it has a little bit of history. Home Corps did a renovation on this property back in 2013. I assume you and your wife purchased it from Home Corps at that point?
Yes, sir.
One of the things, they had approvals for a variety of things, including adding a porch to the front of the house. In the course of removing the porch, or getting ready to install the new porch, or construct the new porch, Amy Aldering made the decision to remove the siding that was on the front of the house. The rest of the house is sided, is vinyl sided. She made the decision because she discovered what she thought at the time was good wood underneath. There was some patching that was needed, but she thought it was original wood and would be good to expose that and begin to sort of suggest the character of the house coming back. As I understand, and you could elaborate on this, as I understand, over the time you've owned the house, Home Corps has been back once already and repainted because it was looking about like it looks now. It was blistering feeling. And then they're back again because it's continuing to do that. And they've requested to reinstall the vinyl siding that was on the house prior to the porch being added. And it looks to me like the channels where the vinyl siding goes were left on the corner of the property.
Okay, you guys have anything else to add, or?
I'm
Just agree?
Yeah, I mean that's the short of it. We have had. So what led us to this is we had Rittenhouse Brothers come out to look at some just general stuff. The floors inside are in need of refinishing already. And so while they were there, because it's already been repainted once in our time, and you can see large portions of it peeling and flaking off where there's the exposed wood. So we just asked the gentleman that came out to do the estimate, your opinion, just kind of a rough, quick shot. What needs to be done here? What would you suggest? And he said from what he can see, it looks like those boards aren't gonna take a whole lot at this stage in their life. And so it was like, well, can you give us a quote to have the vinyl siding reinstalled instead of his guesstimate was 3 years tops, even if they treated and primed and repainted, just because the boards are past their life to hold paint. They're still structurally all right, but he said they're just not going to hold paint very well. And so we're looking at cost effectiveness over the lifetime of the house that we don't have any. I joke that this is my death house.
We all say that.
Yeah, we all
Yeah, we're all
know.
right. So I have no plans to move, and so I would like it to be as cost effective and as easy to maintain for the neighborhood and myself, to be quite honest. And then we also had Forest Floors come in and look at our floors too. And I said, hey, you know about this stuff. Would you mind taking a look at it? And got the same basic opinion of, unless you're going to rip those boards and put new boards up, you're going to be looking at probably 3 years before you're having to redo it again and again. And I would prefer not to do that every 3 years. And no, I haven't pulled any quotes yet to what would it take to replace the boards, or to have somebody come in and strip it and go through the treating process and everything. I'm just looking at it as my experience in working in construction into my mid-20s. When I saw that look from the contractor end, I go, oof, there's going to be a large sticker involved. And we can just put it back to the way it was before the porch, the siding's already there. For me, cost effectiveness and upkeep just makes sense to my budget, to be honest.
Okay. Thanks.
Did you say the siding is there? You have
Yeah,
siding
on
that came
all
off?
3 sides.
Oh, on 3 sides.
Minus the front. Yes, there's a couple small pieces on the south side of the house that came off due to some wind.
Okay. And what is the corner board? Is that a vinyl piece, or is that some kind of truss?
That corner vertical piece is the remnants of what they didn't take off.
Okay.
Are you looking at
This, I think, right here.
that
The blue
dark
piece?
Yeah.
that dark blue is an add-on board that they put next to the
Okay.
vinyl corner piece.
So it's wood?
That yes.
The dark blue piece?
Yeah,
okay.
that dark blue piece is wood, but that's new wood. That's something that they would have added. The light bluish gray is, with all the peeling, is what the old boards are.
Speaking only for myself, I'm impressed when there is vinyl siding, if the corner boards are wood instead of vinyl. It just looks trimmer for a longer period of time. And sooner or later, the kind of hollow version that you put up that comes with vinyl siding you see it broken from time to time. So, just my opinion, but when they take the trouble to do the, usually they say cedar, but whatever kind of wood, and either stain it or paint it, it seems to hold up better. So,
Do you like the look of the house with the wood?
I'm indifferent to it, to be honest.
Phil, I don't know where we are with the state's historic restoration tax credits. Are we there? Is that available now?
not yet.
I didn't think so.
'Cause I wonder if, I've only played around with, I've replaced a few boards on my house. It was surprisingly easy, and I don't know how much it would be to just do the front of the house with those new boards. You might have some idea. But if you could get the cost of that and we could apply for a grant, it seems like that's the kind of thing that would be pretty easy to apply for and a no-brainer to get the 25% tax credit from. But I don't know how the rest of the house being sided plays into that. So I'm just throwing out all the options here.
Yeah, and I don't have any sense of if and when the tax credits will be approved at this point. They
Is this-
wanted to come back quickly this year with those, but
Yeah, fair enough. I get it.
Is this in the R Street district at all? Like, I don't know the boundaries of that district the way that I do.
Our street's there anymore, but it is.
Well,
the grant program
yeah,
is
tapping into
probably
maybe
still
Sue
available.
Harder as
Yeah,
a,
there are some monies available.
Yeah.
Depends on,
where,
income stuff and how much help you might need. I'm not hearing any of that, but that is an option if you want to think about it. I mean, it could potentially be an option as we throw everything on the table here.
I'm just trying to think about all the different possibilities.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's I guess just sharing some of my thoughts. I mean, if you would have come and said you're, I don't know, going to replace with wood siding, it would have been a much different conversation for us to talk about. The vinyl siding, dimensionally, I don't see anything, like, I know we'd be matching what's existing, but does the dimension of the vinyl siding pretty much match what is
I do
the
believe
wood,
the
or is the
vinyl
reveal
siding
smaller?
is wider.
It's a little
than
bit taller.
Yeah,
Okay.
than the wood siding that's currently there.
But it would match the existing
Yes.
vinyl siding, obviously. I mean, so our challenge, or what we have to talk about today, is the standards and how we would translate those into an approval of covering up the historic material with one that isn't a like for like comparison. So I guess that's probably where the commissioners are probably looking at we're all looking at our papers right now and trying to figure out
which.
what what our options are. It's made more complicated by the fact that there's vinyl siding on 3 sides of the house already, and that it was what year? Not that it matters. I'm just kind of curious.
My record says 2013.
And that's when you bought it, or
Yeah.
right after that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's crazy to have. I mean, I've got a completely wood house. To paint it, have to paint it twice within 5.5 years is nuts. I mean, that
Yeah, it
stinks.
seems
That's
like
not
there's
right.
something wrong with it.
Strange.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. I'm sure there's a reason, but. So did Home Corps side the house?
No.
No.
So they
They
were,
took it
the
off.
siding that's there was on when Home Corps bought the house and redid it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
And they removed
They took the
vinyl
front,
off
I
the
got
front
you.
and patched some of the wood and left the remaining.
Are there any pictures of the siding, the vinyl side of the, okay.
No.
Yeah, I went by there and the siding, it's vinyl siding on the sides and looks, decent vinyl siding. Doesn't look crazy different. It's not that much dimensionally different. Because it's a wider siding on the facing than, what we're used to, the narrower siding.
And the trim around the windows would be in that same scope too. They'd be covered as well, or that would be the green, like the window trim.
The window
Is that
trim?
just staying as is
That would stay. There's no reason for that because that's newer wood
Okay.
that they did.
as part of the
Right.
replacement.
So we would
Got it.
keep that. We would do our best to not interrupt, but it's just looking at the continual upkeep over the next 40 years.
Okay, so we're really just talking about the walls, the siding, no fascia, like the soffits and fascias are all out of the scope
Right.
too.
And actually, those are modern.
Right. Well, I like that you brought, you vocalized opinions of builders. Mark went there and checked it out. I think we're all kind of familiar with where your house is. State of disrepair. It's not my expertise, I guess, necessarily to know why it's accepting paint or not accepting paint. So it's interesting to hear the builder's opinions. Anybody else have any thoughts or comments? I'm looking at, I think it comes down to the deterioration of materials.
Did you say you had a
Exterior
painter look at the
alterations,
house or
they're
just
altered.
contractors or?
The one gentleman that looked at it was from Forest Floors. The guy that I just said, hey, on your way out, would you mind giving me your thoughts? And that was after Rittenhouse Brothers had come out and looked at that specifically as a part of some other work that we're going to have that we'd like Rittenhouse to do.
Are they just a general?
Rittenhouse is kind of general, yeah. And then Forest Floors,
Yeah.
flooring guy.
Nick lives on my block.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Kim mentioned, I guess, were you thinking that because the exterior alterations were made, that actually were a detriment
Right.
potentially to the home?
That's where, because with 6,
That one's harder.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
and with 9, it doesn't destroy the materials, 'cause the material's still there. Yeah, if they hadn't put the porch on, then it wouldn't probably have been an issue.
You mean it was putting the porch on that made him take the vinyl siding off?
Uh-huh.
Or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
more
Yeah.
than likely.
And
it
and
probably
if they
was
had
like-
asked us to put the vinyl back on at that time, we would have said yes. Right?
I don't know if we can. I don't know.
I like the argument, but yeah, it's a large speculation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, could we look at the COA and see if it was what the position of the commission was? But I don't know that it matters.
No.
There was actually no discussion of the siding.
Really?
Because as
Really?
best I can tell from the minutes, I think Amy just made the decision in the middle of the work that, hey, I'll leave it off and leave the wood exposed.
Okay. Hmm.
That's what I got from the conversation with her.
But in general, and again, being relatively new, if people, they can repair existing vinyl siding. I mean, if somebody had to take a section off to repair part of the wall, they could put it back on again if they had vinyl siding. So
Correct.
once it's there, it's not, yeah.
It's not sort of verboten once it's
Yeah,
there.
right. I mean, it's not coming saying we want to vinyl side the house so we don't have to paint it anymore. I mean,
Correct.
But I guess on that thought, I mean, if the 3 sides count.
Yeah,
as
right.
it
For
being
already
there,
being
can
there.
we just
Yeah,
finish?
right. I would tend to say,
That's your argument.
yeah. I'm sticking to it.
I like it.
Yeah.
You want to make a motion?
Yeah. I don't know what,
It'd be 9 then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. I would say the.
So I move to approve the application for certificate of appropriateness as submitted and per testimony for, whoops, is that 328
328
Washington Boulevard, based on local guidelines and the Secretary of State Interior Standard number 9.
Support.
All right. Any further discussion? I guess I'd probably just, if the minutes could state that 3/4 of the home's already vinyl siding, and if you agree with this thought, Mark, that that's what helped kind of push towards the standard number 9, where I guess we were just kind of catching the rest of the home up to the 3/4 that are already there.
I would agree with that.
You can wordsmith that. It wasn't the
Yeah.
most articulate
Yeah.
I've ever been. It's been a long day. All right, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
You also say yes, as opposed to say no. Motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What are you doing to your floors? Sanding?
Which
Heavy
is none of our
sigh.
business, by the way.
Oh, man. So the floors are, with dogs and small children, the floors are, we're gonna sand them and then refinish them. And the gentleman at Forest Floors, I can't remember off the top of my head the finished material that he recommended, but we're hoping that it's gonna hold up to the dogs and the children better than the first version that we inherited
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
So,
Good for you. Well, you can get rid of the dogs, but you can't get rid of the
I'm
cats.
working on that.
Or one or
Until
the
they're
other.
18, yeah.
Well, the dogs are, let's see, about 12. So they're
Maybe you want to wait a few years.
Their expiration date is coming soon.
well, that's,
No,
yeah.
I do
They were
not.
great before children, but
Yeah.
now they're a little bit of a bother. So is that,
Thank
You're
you.
I'm
good.
free to go?
You're good,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you all.
Here's the
Have a
paperwork.
good evening.
You too.
All right, next up is 203 West 10th.
Come up and sit. Well, that's okay. We
Yeah.
can ask you questions. Or everybody can just smile at each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
First two. This is Moira Gargano.
Yes.
203 West 10th Street. She is requesting approval to install a front storm door and a new handrail. And let me see if I can find that one now. I don't want to close them all. Okay.
Whatever, the one with the pet door won't work for your pet because your pet's bigger than half of that door, as I recall.
What do you have?
I'm going to retriever.
Oh, yeah.
A very large,
Beautiful,
Very-
beautiful dog.
beautiful dog.
Okay, so this is the house. And this is where the storm door would be installed. And she is also interested in replacing this handrail, which is not real sturdy, with a metal handrail, which was shown, and I think I can find a picture. She's not sure yet which way the door will swing, and therefore which side the steps or the railing makes the most sense. So that is the storm door that she is proposing. Single light in black, handle like that. Again, that one. That's the existing railing.
Which is not original to the house.
No, I don't
Mm-mm.
believe so. The steps certainly are not.
Mm-mm.
Does it connect to
Looks
the
like it had some metal
house?
there at one time.
It does look like it,
Right.
doesn't it? Yeah. Let's see if I can find the.
Yeah, the railing's not on there.
You can see I miss Mallory. Mallory's on vacation this week. That is
okay.
something
Yeah, I like
akin to what you'd like to install.
Are you replacing the steps as well, or just the railing, or not the steps? How is that gonna be anchored in the metal railing? How is it gonna,
I'm leaving that up to
the contractor?
to Roger DeYoung.
Okay.
Is your thought that the railing would be on the same side as the latch to the door or the same side as the hinge?
I was looking at other people's doors, and I think that I would have them on opposite. So the inner door, the handles here, and then I would have the storm door over here,
Okay.
open up that way.
Huh,
So then
okay.
that would open up to this way. So then I wouldn't have to change sides on the railing.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even sure I want to replace the railing either. I mean, it's totally up to your suggestions, because I'm open to anything.
Do you guys want to talk about the railing first, since we're on?
But the railing's not
Picture.
stable for you the way it is now, right?
Not for elderly people.
Okay.
For me, it's fine, but
For somebody else who relied on
yeah,
it, it
it's
wouldn't.
just a little, yeah.
Okay.
So it could mean just, tightening up screws in the cement or something like that.
So it might be
If I had-
possible to stabilize the old railing.
Yeah, I
As
think
opposed to
that's
replacing
possible.
it.
Mhm.
Well, and this is quite different too, Moira, because it looks like it doesn't attach to the house.
Yep, that
Plus,
one
in
is-
this case, it's pivoted around the other way, you'd be coming straight out.
Right.
So that's a lot different, but
Yeah.
It's actually the same number of risers
Mhm.
on this as what she has there.
Right. But doesn't it appear that this is just sitting on its two pedestals? It doesn't appear to be attached to the house.
Yeah.
It's not that I can see.
Yeah, it was probably anchored in when they made steps.
Mhm.
So the things to consider section with regards to the handrail just mentions the security factor, and then that's kind of a requirement by code, but then that you were looking for any suggestions from the commission that we might have regarding the choice. So I guess at the end of it, I think we could recommend repairing the one that's in place, or if you were to replace one, like we could speak to materials, or yeah, that type of proposal that's in front of us, whether we're in support of it. And I guess that would be what the motion or what the applicant would be looking for today, is just if you were to leave, you'd have the option to do something with the railing. Is that right? Okay. I guess I feel like just from an aesthetic standpoint, they're very different. Functionally, too, is probably the most important thing. Usually the materials of what's on screen are a little more readily approved. I think it's more just aesthetics, how it works with the home. But I don't know that aesthetics are necessarily the strongest part of the other solution either. So does the commission have thoughts on the material? Like the other one's wood, this is metal. Like Phil said, the run is about the same. We can sometimes get as granular as diameters, or like picket styles. This is very curvilinear versus the other one is rectilinear. Do we feel strongly one way or another that one is a better solution to match the style of the home or to be indicative of that time period? John's kind of nodding his head.
Well, I'm struck by how little life something like this has. I mean,
The
in
proposal.
10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if it was different.
Got it.
To me, like every house you look at just depends on when they replaced it last. And I don't know that the iron stands out as being unfit or less fit to me.
I mean, less visually
Mhm.
appealing.
Yeah, the only reason why I was thinking iron, just because the lamppost, the light is a black
Mm.
metal. And then if the storm door would be a black window kind of frame,
Mhm.
I thought it would tie in better
Mhm.
than the white railing. That was my only thought.
And we don't really have say on color, so just knowing that it's metal and it's painted is
Mhm.
probably all we can really
Right.
have. You can do whatever you want with yours to
With the color.
colors,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Be hot pink if you wanted. Or lime green.
But thanks for your explanation. It's always fun to hear why people choose what they choose.
Mhm.
I guess I like the understated nature of the solution.
Mhm.
And I think I already made my point. Like I prefer the metal and the iron solutions over the.
Well, and I think, isn't that just the only, it's a little bit fancy for the rest of the house. The rest of the house has such clean lines, and then suddenly has, I don't know what you call those.
Mhm.
The turn spindles
Turn,
versus
yeah.
square or something,
Mhm.
yeah.
Hmm.
It seems like everything else is kind of straightforward.
We can also move on to the door, discuss the door, and then talk about the whole package. So the door is full light. Thanks for providing the cut sheet. Lakeview Plus. again, I think that with these types of solutions, the biggest thing is if you can take it away, or it's not necessarily damaging the house to the point where you're doing damage that could, the original character is not there anymore. So I like that it's full glass. You can see as
Right,
much
yeah.
of the character as possible.
Is the main door sort of historic? Does it look old or not?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, Deanne Hooksema renovated the house, so it's just a brown stained wooden door.
There's a
Have any glass in
large.
it or
I
no?
like
there's
it. It's a large
glass
window
inside.
glass,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like kind of our front door, you know, like big,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
big glass and panels. Looks like panels, hard to tell. But
Down at the bottom.
So it's nice to expose that.
yeah, yeah. The more of it you can see through the glass.
Any other questions for Mara on the door? Or the handrail? Or does somebody feel like they're close to maybe making a motion on the application?
I'm a little torn on the style of the handrail, just because it is a little more fancy.
Decorative.
Yeah, and decorative than what's on the house, but the storm door seems like a pretty straightforward, for me, seems pretty straightforward, non-issue.
I guess another option might be if you wanted to put a motion together, if you receive feedback on the handrail, it could come back for administrative approval if it's something that we set direction on, or if your motion would say just to simplify it or more rectilinear.
I mean, John's point's always a good one. It's like my argument for why I don't have an issue with the storm door should be the same argument for why I don't have an issue with the handrail, but at the same point, I'm not conflicted. It's one or, I mean, they're both nice. But I think about one being more appropriate style-wise for the home as being the one that's
Character of
wood
the
and
home.
rectilinear, but
Nick, our voice of that.
I know,
is
sorry,
not
I'm
present
channeling
right
my
now.
inner
You are,
Nick.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Get my pencils in.
What time? No, it's only 5:30. We're gonna get done with this application before Nick shows up. So.
Yes.
What time is Nick is
Around
Nick-
6 is when he thinks he's.
Oh, we're done with this before Nick
Yes,
gets here.
exactly.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I'm gonna take a whack at this one. I gotta figure out which. All right, I'm going to move to approve the application for a COA, as submitted per testimony for, I know it's 10th Street, but what's the? 203 West 10th Street. Based on local guidelines and Secretary of Interior Standard 9. This project meets the standard, well, do I have to actually go through that? Well, it meets the standard because of the fact that any new additions, exterior alterations, or related construction will not destroy historic material features, spatial relationships that characterize property. I want a caveat in there that I would prefer to see a hand railing that was, I like the wooden or rectilinear style of what you have now. It ties a little bit more appropriately to the age of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my preference, but I don't want to write in as precluding if there's a reason for the
Let's
other.
see if you get a second, and
Yeah,
then we can discuss
okay.
further. Is that
I'll support.
all right? Okay.
Okay.
So, I guess my question, you didn't speak to materiality either. So the one that's in place is wood versus the proposal is a different material. So maybe we clarify where.
My preference would be a railing similar to what you have now in wood to replace your existing, if you need to replace it. That would be my preference, but I don't want to preclude her from, because the railing is not part of the home. And I go back to what I say all the time, which is we're charged with maintaining the integrity of the home itself, and a railing in this instance is not
So we've done that
make or
before.
break a difference.
So if we approve a wood replacement, then she can still come back later. Like if you find a metal one that you're in love
That
with,
you-
or
yeah,
something
that you
like
just
that,
have to have
you
them.
could still come back later with that proposal. Does that make sense to you?
Or she could not replace it, just renovate it, the one that's existing. right?
Correct.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's.
we could approve the wood solution that Kim's kind of describing, and it doesn't mean that we said no to the one that you put forward. So if you could think about what the decision was made and then potentially come back later, or you could just move forward, like Mark said, with
Renovating the wood one.
Yep. It looked like in the proposal that you were kind of open to talking about this at tonight's
Yeah.
meeting. So have you seen where our heads, like, I guess, sorry, we were discussing Kim's motion. We should probably vote on it, but that's what it means, essentially.
So clarification, it includes wood at this point.
For the railing.
existing one to be restored, or wood?
Or
to be
replaced with
restored
one
or
like for
replaced
like.
somewhere?
Yeah, a like for like solution. And the door as proposed.
Right, door as proposed.
That doesn't mean that 3 months from now, after the door's in, and you're looking at it, and you look at, you think, and you find another wrought iron run that you think might be more period, that you could still take a crack at that too, right? She could come back.
Oh,
with it.
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is for period look, you'd want it to be more rectangular, right?
But you're right,
Rather
rectal,
than-
linear.
rather than the curve.
Yeah,
You know.
it just feels more
Okay.
appropriate to the age and the style of the home.
Mhm. Okay, I get it.
Okay. Let's vote then.
Okay?
Is that clear? Yeah, that's, okay, so, all those in favor of?
Was there a second to the motion?
Yeah, John
John.
did. All those in favor say yes.
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 I also say yes. And that leaves no one opposed, so Kim's motion passes. So I think we kind of talked through it, but if you think about this and that's just not the solution you want, the table's still open for you to do a
Yes.
So
metal
what you're saying is
solution.
no to that particular style of black railing, but, right, so if I do want a railing, a wrought iron railing, then I'd come back to you with another proposal, with another picture of the one
Of
that
the
was.
one you
Yes.
want,
Yeah.
yeah.
Otherwise, you put the door on, just leave it the way it is, or
Yeah.
replace what's there, no problem.
And I think if, like you mentioned, the light fixture, if there's other things that the railing it plays off of, I think that would be helpful to see in
Okay.
picture form
Yeah.
too, just for everybody to talk about.
That makes backing the car up down the driveway a lot easier, because if you run into the railing, you're gonna really damage your car.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Hopefully the
much.
storm door
Thank
keeps you
you.
warmer in the winter.
All right. So do I have to wait for something in writing, or do I just go ahead and?
Yeah, there'll be a certificate of appropriateness that'll be completed
Okay.
and signed, and then we'll send that out to you and give a copy to the building
Okay.
department as well.
And then I go to Menard after that.
Then you go to
Then you go to
Menards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
you.
good night.
Thanks, Maureen.
All right, next up is 204 West 9th Street. And I think there was a note in our packet.
Yeah,
We- or-
there was a note, let me pass these around. Keep one, but go ahead and pass.
Yep.
We did receive an application.
Okay.
I'm surprised Rachel is not here.
Thanks.
Here you go.
We received an application. There was a photograph in the material we sent you. This is a little better version of that
Yeah.
photograph. That is what she's proposing. And she has also tacked onto that, which is not reflected in the report. She wants to add a storm door as well. And it's on the back of this.
Good.
So it's otherwise it's pretty simple. That's the door, and you can see the sort of shape it's in. It's rusting, got problems with the locks and all of that. So she wants to remove that. You'll notice it's sided, so there's no love lost with the siding on here. But she wants to replace the door and now install the storm door in this location. So
Is there any porch or anything?
It is, it's a small porch.
Yeah, real small.
Or covered, inch, small?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a terribly contributing front door, so there's not,
No.
not it has to feel comfortable making.
Would you refinish
comments
that
out
metal
loud.
door?
That's torture.
Is there any note of just the materiality of the new door set? Do we know?
Well, I went to Menards to try to figure out what it was she was buying, and it was a steel door with insulation.
Really? Okay.
It was, no, I didn't have this picture when I looked at their door, so, but I'm pretty sure that was the one.
Okay.
She was talking about.
Yeah, in the description for the estimate, it says steel, single door steel, brass Renaissance. Yeah,
Some of the brass.
yeah, Renaissance. I think that's just the style.
That was part of it.
Where are you?
That was part of the original
Okay.
report.
Yeah.
And do we know whether the door opening is going to be further reduced? And so you're pointing there about,
I
do we
do
have any
not.
ideas? Okay.
I do not.
Well, the addition of the storm door will probably change some of that visibility too.
Is putting on a storm door something that comes before the Historic District Commission? I mean, is that if you wanted to put a storm door on your front, that's all?
Yep.
I was just curious if that was,
I think there was a change in interpretation at some point, because I can recall when that wasn't necessary, because it was assumed to be something applied to the exterior, you could remove
And
it.
it was removable.
Things
but it's sort of like aluminum storm windows or something, I mean.
Yeah.
I think it became considered the same way anything that was attached to the house was. So that's why sometimes if we have fences or awnings or other things that actually attach to the home itself, that's why that becomes kind of the, no pun intended, but kind of sticky point about it.
Yeah.
So I think I think that was sort of under the same guise because it was actually attached to the home.
All right, maybe we just talk a little bit. So I don't have any other questions about the front door proposal. Anybody else? The storm door then, while we're on the topic, it is the divided light.
And it
It's
is
exactly what we see
this
here.
one.
For all we know.
That's as much as I know.
I mean, sometimes we often request cut sheets, so it's, I guess I don't know. How literal we want to be, but it looks like the lake view, split view, clear light. Can literally take the description off the photo if we're in support of, or if we want to make sure that the door that.
It's just hard to know without, because we don't want to interpret what she is thinking about.
I mean, she has to come back if it's, or we risk approving something or rejecting something that isn't in line.
Because we don't have the right information.
So sometimes if we have too many
That's-
questions about a proposal, we have to table it until somebody is able to actually represent it. I don't.
And I indicated that to her.
Okay.
So they're not going to change the dimension of the doorway, or
We don't know.
the door's same size for same
They're
size?
they're installing it with a new frame. So whether they're taking out or fitting within, I don't know.
I don't think we can make any kind of a motion to approve or deny based on not having more information.
Yeah, I feel like there's just some, I don't know, I'd like to
I mean,
talk
they-
to her a little bit about the window and some of the other stuff too, just hear the, similar to what we just did with Moira.
Yeah.
Going back to the storm door, I'm curious, probably most of them are aluminum, right? I mean, we don't make somebody put a wood storm door on with glass.
Some people want to, and that,
Yeah, I mean, if they want to, but I mean,
Sometimes it's-
unlike aluminum storm windows, which are kind of, we wouldn't do that. Aluminum storm door is generally okay. Is
It's
that
become a standard.
become a standard? And as far as divisions, would we rather say, we'd see mostly glass or?
We sometimes have made suggestions because the homeowners asked for them. They just
Mhm.
don't, lots of times the homeowner just doesn't, our homeowner's just open
Yeah.
to looking for some guidance too, so oftentimes,
Because I'm thinking that really the storm door becomes probably the year-round door. I mean, they don't take them off in the summer, right? Probably
Correct.
put maybe they even have screens that go in.
some do, some
So
don't.
especially this kind.
then it becomes the de facto front door of the house.
Right.
So, okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I would say, we see all kinds of proposals.
Yeah.
Some of them are half-light, some of
Yeah.
them are aluminum down below with
Right,
relief
so the
or
more
texture.
glass
It's more like
would
the
reveal-
garage
yeah.
door
Right.
conversation
Sure,
for
sure.
your
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the full glass lower profile submittals are typically more
Yeah,
what
what we want to see, yeah. Okay, thanks.
So, I guess we've discussed a couple of options. We can always make a motion to approve or deny. We can also move, there's the top one where we can move to table if we have some questions or if we'd like to have further discussion with the applicant. We could approve one or the other and table the other one, or deny the other one.
I think there's enough questions about both of them
The
to
table?
Just, I'll move to table a review of the application for the certificate of appropriateness for 204 West 9th Street until next month's meeting. Sounds so. And ask the applicant to provide more information about the size of the new door and what was the question about the storm door?
Exactly what one.
Oh, which-
Yeah, I support.
All right, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so say yes. So application is tabled. All right, thanks for your patience. We are to 121 West 12th Street.
But I think we're going to take a 20-minute break.
We have to have our meal. This is our pay.
Pass the chips, yeah.
That's right. Trick or treat.
Can I speak out on something?
Yep.
Just observation. And I wanted to say this in a real nice way, but when somebody doesn't show up for some, to try to get something passed through, and other people are here waiting to be in the agenda, we always, when I was on the board, would slip that one person to last,
Mm.
because then the people that are waiting don't have to sit and wait for somebody that didn't show up and talk through the project or the process. It's just an observation.
It's a good
I don't want, and I don't want to say that in a
No,
mean way.
it's-
It's just
no.
No, it's a
it's
good
more of a
reminder.
practical sense.
Yeah,
The
no,
stalls have been sitting here
yeah.
for a long time.
You threw me
And
when you
I'm
were
used
already
to
at the
that.
table and I saw your name at the end.
Yeah, so
we should have
I
talked
was
about it
saying
earlier.
for future, and maybe it won't work in every case, but
Good comment.
A good
Yeah.
reminder.
Thank you.
Because we had the chance at the beginning to reorganize the agenda, and so sure.
Yep.
Yeah,
But
thanks.
surely this was worth your time. I
That's
mean,
right.
it was
Sometimes
fun.
sometimes
How
you're
gonna go back and
outrageous.
redo the
How exciting.
application.
This is
But let
pretty
me say another
exciting
thing.
stuff,
Say
you
one more
have to
thing.
admit.
I wanted to thank you. Phil got us in on this quick agenda here, real quick.
Yes.
And that was very thankful, very much for that, Phil.
Welcome.
When we come back with changes on our storm door, we'll
Yeah.
See, now you know.
Prepared.
All right, so on that note, the proposal is for new kitchen windows, and maybe Phil, you want to add a little more context or detail?
Waiting for some images, but
I think they were all in there twice too, at least when I downloaded the packet, that we had double of, we had plenty of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
it's not showing any. Okay, this is 121 West Wall Street.
You know that.
There is a window in the kitchen area on the west side of the house that is, they're in the process of renovating the kitchen and would like to replace this window, which I should note does not have any of the trim similar to the other original windows in the house. So that probably was an addition at some point.
60s casement window, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like in our house.
And they've asked to... You sent me too much, Jeff. Install
Times
3
change.
windows, side by side, windows in that space with an increase in height on the windows.
To match the other height of the other windows, and the same trim, you know, that the old
Oh,
ones
that
have.
beautiful trim.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Pretty.
Yeah,
I
it's
love your
really nice.
home.
No,
I really do.
Me too.
Yeah.
I walk by it so often.
Same.
Everybody loves the pink house.
Does the pink
The
house?
pink house.
Yeah.
It's part of the trolley tour too. They mentioned that beams came out of the
The church, yeah.
blown down church.
I know, that's really cool.
I am a little irritated because I always thought that's the house I'm gonna buy when I wanna get out of this big house. And all of a sudden, it's like, it's for sale. I said, no, somebody already snapped it up. I think, I didn't even know what, and then I find out it's you. Good thing, lucky
You
for
need
you, I'm
more
not voting
enemies
on it.
buying
I don't
the
get to
house.
vote, lucky for you guys.
We had an agreement with Peggy for like 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
and
Well, I
it's
hope you're
time to
happy.
live by the house.
That's what you need to do. I don't know how many times we get people like dropping flyers in our mailbox. If you ever want to sell your home, just, when time comes, I'll go through my folder.
I should see
Yeah,
those
yeah.
too.
You used to get that all the time too. Street boy.
Sweet boy.
Yep.
Jeff, I did have one question.
Yeah, sure.
Storm windows. The other windows in the front have storm windows.
I think we do a duplicate if we can. One of the things about these windows, they'll be wood, obviously, but we'll have to kind of see how that would work with storm. This is a thermal pane window, so probably not necessary. It would be harder to, you could, in place of this, in those, there's obviously screens on the outside of these. There's no screens, I don't think, on the other windows on the front side.
I don't think so. Do yours probably go in and
Yeah,
out like
I mean-
ours do? You either have screens or you have storms depending on the season.
That's a great question, Phil. Because can you adapt a wood storm window to those? I think that would be pretty tricky. Obviously.
Well, theoretically, you don't need it, right?
Right.
Right, you don't
So
need
I-
it,
yeah,
so. But it's a good observation.
What would the design of the larger, would it just be a large pyramid? I'm trying to visualize how you think of capping the top if you were going to try to match the trim.
Yeah, another great question, Mark. I think that you still want to try to do the center as the actual decorative part, and then have it come down to the ends. Because right now, if you look at it, it kind of fades down.
Right.
Now, as far as the depth of the fade and how tall, it might look better if it's taller on top, in the middle, and then fades to the same dimensions on the sides. We'd have to almost kind of mock something up to look.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. And Phil's point in the note about, whether we want to make it clearly different than the others versus trying to match it.
Mhm.
Maybe do the width around, but not necessarily have that cap on the top. I don't know. I mean,
We could do this too. We could come back with, with the actual piece that I could bring in and say,
Mhm.
what do you think of this? We could actually tack it up, and you guys could go by
yeah,
and
it
look
might
at
be
it.
interesting to
Mhm.
see a mock-up of
Yeah,
that.
that's a great idea. And that'd be good for Tim and Nancy also to see
Mhm.
that.
I think the same note was in there. So the awning is gone totally. So then you'll get to see the trim. Yeah.
Yeah, we took it off last week.
Are you going to
It
put it
didn't-
back up in the?
If the windows done were not planned to, the awning was not original.
Yeah, I'm just, as a person who put in awnings after we lost trees, I'm a
Yeah.
big awning fan now, because when you have those tall windows, the sun really comes in from the west, but that, Anyway, that's just an observation from a
Yeah.
neighbor, you know.
You can always put
Yeah,
another proposal
sure.
in too
Yeah,
if you
right,
want it
right.
in later.
It was very interesting, because the ceiling in the kitchen was only about 7 foot tall and had been
Mhm.
remodeled in the 50s. And when Jeff's
Yeah.
crew took out the ceiling, you could see there had been a tall window.
A taller window, you could see the
Sure,
header
sure. Oh,
was
yeah,
the same as
absolutely.
the headers of the other
Yeah.
windows.
Yes, that was
So we
really
thought, oh,
exciting.
let's just go
Yeah,
back to the way it
yeah,
was.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Interesting to paint the little electrical box.
Yeah.
With
Oh,
light.
it's
You
a
want
milk,
it?
it's a milk box.
Oh, milk box, okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and we're gonna keep that, for
Yeah,
sure.
no, it's definitely a cool thing. It's just that I might have painted the whole thing one color, but it's, John
You
probably
wanted it to
did
go
that. So
away.
he did a nice job of putting the line right down.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I had a buddy that could fit in through those. It was a little while ago.
Your home burglary days.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the stalls or Jeff? John's looking at the
Mhm.
standards.
Well, it doesn't seem like the window isn't something that's, would you say, contributing, not contributing?
Well, it's certainly not original. I mean,
Not
it's a-
original to the
Right.
house, so
Yeah.
that there's nothing that we're destroying that would be of significance.
I think the most interesting thing we talked about was the recreating the character, but it's fun to hear that those windows probably used to be there. So
Mhm.
I don't think it's necessarily a false sense. I think it's just a restoration or bringing it back to what.
Yeah, it's just with a wider window,
I like the
what that would
study. Yeah,
look
I
like.
like your
Just-
suggestion and your willingness.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
It'll be, the bottom is a lot taller than the one next to it, the
Mhm.
old ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to figure out which one to use, John.
Yeah, I am.
I know.
The packet recommendation or consideration says look at number 9.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think that 9 is just.
It's probably
It's probably the closest
exterior
because of
alteration
the,
that
right.
doesn't-
I'll move to approve the application for a certificate of appropriateness as submitted for testimony for this address.
121 West 12th.
Thank you, 121 West 12th, based on local guidelines and the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. And I think it meets the standards because we're not destroying anything that's historic, and we're using historic materials for them.
Yep. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Any further discussion? I think I guess the application would mention the mock-up in some
Yeah.
way.
I think it'd be good.
Jeff
Like-
would be willing to mock it up, and would it be just you'd let us know when it's ready to come
Yeah,
to look at? Is that the
definitely.
easiest
I'll
way to
call
do it?
Phil and just let you know, you guys can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'll probably be going by anyhow.
Some of us.
Oh, yeah,
go by
we'll be
every day.
ogling it
I'll
anyway,
just
yeah.
temporarily put it in, and you guys can make a decision before you permanently put it in.
Okay.
Okay.
I love the fact that you kind of had that historical marker inside the house of where the windows originally were.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love finding,
It
I
was
love
neat.
finding little surprises
And
like
I thought I
that.
had a picture on my phone of it, but I couldn't find it.
No, that's great.
But, yeah.
Cool.
And we did, when we went in the basement, those, what did you say, the word
The
12 by
12
12?
beams,
yeah.
The beams.
From the church,
Yeah,
yeah, those
that's
are pretty
very
cool. And a
exciting.
That's
bunch
a little
of
overbuilt.
hand-wrought nails.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And the wallpaper, because that area that's now the kitchen used to be 2 little bedrooms, and one was obviously like a nursery because the wallpaper above was little kid stuff, and the other was a mold from the 30s or something. Sure.
So where do you think the kitchen was originally?
Way in the back, there used to be a portion, there was a sink back in that room. That was the
Peg
kitchen
gave
out
us
back.
pictures, she had a file of the house,
Okay.
and there's a picture from the backyard facing the house, and there was like a little porch
Okay.
that went into the kitchen.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
And she had a drawing of the layout from the daughter of the Zeitgemas,
Okay.
who died in her 90s, who Peg had met.
Mhm.
And said, oh, this is where the rooms were. That's why we knew there were two
Yeah,
bedrooms there.
Tim, what year was that bill?
58.
1870.
Oh, I thought it was-
One, is this?
Wow,
I thought it
that's
was
getting
earlier.
down there.
It wasn't
No, it'll be
rebuilding the
after,
church
yeah,
from
be
fire,
some-
it was
yeah, be-
rebuilding it from
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
windstorm.
Yeah, 79 maybe.
So it's one of the oldest ones.
Yeah, one of the
around.
oldest,
Almost
yeah.
your house is the
78.
1800s as well.
Yeah.
Was that like farmland or, oh, sorry, was that like, why, what was that at that time? Just like a little dirt road or?
Well, it was platted in, the city blocks, but yeah.
The city
it's
just moved its way south.
Yeah, it
block by
wasn't,
block.
like a farmland that got developed by the city, because it's part of the original, let's say, are we in the western edition, or are we in the?
I think that's
anyway.
on Western.
Yeah, but, yeah, it's an unusual, it's more like a farmhouse in the middle of the, block. Yeah, I think it was just a style that they could throw up, that carpenters knew by heart, they didn't have to get blueprints, they just threw them up, because they're all over town, those little, I call them farmhouse style.
Yeah, we're really happy for you.
Yeah.
Really happy. Hope it all works out.
So now you'll know why the trolley actually stopped in front of the house.
So he always points out that 1960s window and
Yeah,
says,
except for that window.
it's a really interesting house.
So I don't want to stifle the conversation.
I'm sorry about
Did you
that.
I love
go
it,
by
but
what Roger and I referred
we
to as the
haven't voted
starter
yet,
house
so,
on our
yes.
block, the one, the
Oh,
little
okay.
yellow house that
Gotta
keeps
bring it
rotating,
up.
somebody has a
we're putting
baby and then
in-
somebody
Is
else.
the thing about the mock-up just kind of.
Yeah, I guess I want to clarify that because Jeff said we could make a decision with the group. So is the intent that we could all go by independently and weigh in and provide Phil with feedback, and then Phil could make administrative approval, or do we want to go organize a meeting where we all go see and then we vote? Because I don't think we want to delay these guys. I think we want to
Right,
just
it's not delayed.
Keep 'em moving.
Yeah, no, I think the administrative,
So-
whoever weighs in on
does that sound fair?
Would you call Phil?
Okay. So when
Yeah,
Jeff lets us
just
know.
let us
Probably
know
takes
and then-
almost 7 weeks now, 8 weeks to get a window, so,
Oh, really?
yeah. It's a long
it.
time.
Well, does somebody have to sketch it out? I mean, I assume you can draw something. I
Well,
mean-
I'll make a template for you guys to see. We'll just do it, on a piece of either, I'll do something.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
okay.
I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to make it easy for you.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
give him
Make it
feedback
right.
and he can let you know.
Last time I just came in and took pictures and gave them to Phil, and he could just, also.
Circulate 'em.
Just
Yeah.
give you some
Sure,
pictures.
sure,
sounds
yeah,
good.
just email them to us all, that'd be fine.
Okay, so I think that'd be the only other thing I'd add to the motion. We can vote. All
Okay,
right, so all those in favor say yes?
yes.
Yes.
I also say yes. Leaves no one opposed. So your application passes.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, you guys. Thanks for
Yeah.
help getting this in.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much. Yeah.
All right.
See you.
Okay, bye.
See you, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye,
It feels
Jeff.
super late. I
Yeah.
know, but it's only 6 o'clock.
I know.
Yeah.
Time changes.
Oh, okay.
Crazy.
Then we'll put, I told you 6, we'll put our house on the market.
Yeah, I'll knock on the door sometime when I see you.
Are you in there?
It's
Are
always
you in
fun
that
to
house
see
yet?
houses in progress.
No, we're not gonna move into the pink house until.
So if somebody's working in there and the doors are open, I'm going in. I've never been on the inside, but I just always thought that was the coolest thing.
It is,
Yeah.
it's bigger than it looks from the outside too.
I gotta believe it. And that little back screen in the porch.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm getting there.
Nothing to do with anything. People say,
Have
okay,
fun.
fine.
Thank you.
All right, do we need to talk about the administrative approval? Is it just making a note that you approved it?
Just making.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Then we will move on.
Hi.
How are you?
Good for you.
You part of the team?
The committee and staff
yes.
report
Or do
section.
you have an application?
I do not have an application.
An update.
He's just coming to visit.
Yes, just come and visit, because these are I
Super
mean,
fun.
riveting from the audience.
I know. It's
We're thinking about a show, you know?
Pretty exciting stuff.
District Commission. Live.
Okay, break
That's
out the
right.
beer.
Okay.
Everybody's
That's right.
done.
Over the suggestion.
We're still running, so it's not gonna work.
Oh, shoot.
Shut that thing off.
Usually we do
Knock it over.
makeup before this point, but
Okay, first item on the committee and staff report is small cell antenna infrastructure. You will recall at the last meeting, I shared with you 2 examples of the small cell antennas that are being proposed. One right out here on the corner, over here on the corner by the library, and then another one close to Friendship House on 13th Street by the seminary. You had some questions. I didn't have all the answers. Matt Van Dyken is here. He is working with DPW on this whole small cell antenna process, and this is just the first company to come in and propose small cells. There could be others that follow. So some of the questions, and Matt and I spoke earlier today, some of the questions that I had, and I think you had some of these as well at the last meeting. What happens with the second one if they come in and want to do something different, or if they want to put one right next to it, or what are all the game rules as this whole process moves forward? And I know all the answers aren't in place, but Matt is working with DPW to look into this and try to figure out where all of this goes. All that having been said, Historic District Commission, if these are located within the historic district, we do not have a formal authority to vote yea or nay on these.
Is that a state thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I'll just kind of jump in.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Questions, but Public Act 365 of 2018 came down from the state and basically said, thou shalt allow in the public right of way. So it took all of our ability to say, no, we're not going to allow these things away. We had that in the past. It took our ability to have like a sole source agreement with any company in place. So they stripped out a lot of the ability of the municipalities to stop these things from coming in. So that's the Public Act that did that. That went into effect, I believe it was March 12, if I'm remembering correctly, and we had 90 or 120 days to pass our own local ordinance. Basically our own local ordinance, and if you guys want to see that, it's online, and I have a paper copy here. What the rights that we have with our local ordinance are basically aesthetic rights. So we can say we want to have a cantenna. So if Phil, I don't know if Phil has the ability to throw one of those images back up there.
Yeah.
But we have the ability to limit the volume of the equipment that can be on the pole. It's like the size of the enclosure. We have the ability to tell them where not to put that cantenna piece. And that's kind of from the small cell perspective, part of it, that's the control that we have. So you can see these are going on in many cases downtown. The application that we currently have is through ACD. ACD is Verizon Wireless's subcontractor. So they're doing the job for Verizon, and there's going to be 8 of them within the downtown area. I believe there's only 2 that are kind of standalone like that. All of the rest of them, actually, we'll be going in and we'll be replacing light poles. So then they will actually have a mast arm and an LED head on them for the light poles. So not the short decorative ones, but all the taller ones in the downtown. And none of those will be located on 8th Street. They will all be off kind of in different pieces and parts, 7th, 9th, 13th, areas like that. So I will say that we have, in the very recent past with the GDK development, Hope College has contacted the city asking us, what are you going to do about the lack of cell phone coverage for our students in our dorms? Hopcat opened up, and Hopcat's reservation system is via text, and within the restaurant itself, Verizon customers have no service, period. So that creates a bit of a challenge for everyone. So, these things are coming. There's some different cell technologies that are out there. There's kind of call them the large cell, where you see the 300-foot tower with the blinking lights and That's how you're connecting in your cell connection. And then these are really designed and intended to be in much denser situations like our downtown, where it's a fairly dense network of antennas, and then they're backhauled via fiber out to Verizon's network.
So Verizon is putting these in, or somebody for Verizon?
Yes.
We're not, what's the city's obligation to this, other than hope it looks good?
So
Do we have money in this?
we know, no,
Not at all.
we don't put any money in it. Our role in this is to work with the companies to say, okay, this is our ordinance. We have some aesthetic pieces that we want to make sure that we review with you before these go in, and really that's our role.
So when we replace light poles, they're paying for the light pole?
Mhm. They pay for the installation. They pay us $100 per facility permit fees, and then they actually have separate pole attachment agreements with the BPW, because the BPW owns all of these poles, and the act actually outlines what they need to pay the BPW to do that. They've been working honestly, I've been working with them almost for 5 years in the downtown with them with different projects. First they wanted to just go right down 8th Street with these big, ugly, terrible boxes that are bad, and we've worked with them to kind of move those into the locations that we feel have less of a aesthetic impact than the corner of River and 8th Street.
There is a photo of one with the lamp, the pole just extends above the lamp, and it's just a kind of a fatter pole. I mean, it's not.
Yep.
Do we have that photo? I don't, there'll only be 8 of these things.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be 8 of these things. I don't think too many people are gonna notice. I mean, I don't find this to be a really big encumbrance even if it's in the district. Do you? I mean,
Well, that's certainly less intrusive even than the first picture. I mean, that one you hardly notice.
Yeah, most of them, this technology has come, like any technology, right?
Yeah.
Over a period of years, it's come a long way, where all of the equipment is either within the inside of the pole or it's within that shroud that's on the outside. So they do become much less obtrusive.
Yeah.
And I think you're exactly right. My theory is people don't look up. So
I don't think this is that.
they don't. People don't look up. So
Is this all 5G? Is this
No.
5G capacity, or this has nothing to do with 5G?
So it does. 5G is a small cell product. These are going in as 4G locations. They're not ready for 5G here yet, but these exact poles, antennas, and shrouds in the future can be upgraded to 5G technology.
Not that I care, so a flip phone, I don't get a ladybug.
I think Holland is ready for
You're
5G.
You're on the 1G network.
Yeah, and I can
Not that
give
I
you some,
care.
just for your information, we do
Got an
require
Amish cell phone.
for each
Yeah.
location, you can pass that around. There are some opponents of 5G technology that are concerned with health impacts. For each location, we do require that they give us an RF study so that we can review that and see how far what level the radiation is at what distance from the poles.
From the pole.
Yeah, you can see all of those. I've reviewed
Is that a
all of them.
legitimate concern?
Depends on who you talk to. We've worked with the BPW, worked with the provider. If you got right up to that antenna and it was powered on and you went to grab it, you're probably not doing yourself any favors. So we actually have emergency shutoffs where our BPW can come in and just chunk and the thing powers off and now it's safe. There are additional requirements in our ordinance that they actually have to have it labeled up high. So if for whatever reason our tree crew or the BPW was up in a bucket truck and they were able to get near where some of those higher levels are, you would see it very, very quickly.
So it's a legitimate concern that people have.
If you get too close to it, if the pole gets knocked over with a car accident, yeah, we wouldn't want people walking up to it.
Just to step back a second, this is similar to the poll we've got. This is out of Denver. They basically say this, not this. And it sort of gives a sense of how you can pass it. Yep. Gives you a sense of how encumbered these poles can become if nobody's paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And Jay, you saw when we passed our local ordinance, I had a photo up that was just ugly, just downright ugly. So there are, you've seen the guidelines, I don't know how much you all reviewed those. Is there imminent progress that these small cell facilities are gonna be popping up within the historic district in the next year? Probably not, but I wouldn't be surprised if, as we get further down the road, they do begin to pop up, so.
Well,
Is
a lot of
the-
historic districts.
Yeah, are they gonna
historic district
standardize on a certain design, or is each vendor gonna have their own design, or?
So the design and the radio equipment inside will obviously change with each vendor. They'll have their
Right.
preferred. But what we can do is we can force a similar shroud.
Okay,
The BPW has standardized on poles.
okay,
So
yeah.
are you gonna see some variation in them potentially? Just because of the differences in the equipment that's inside. But I don't think it'll be noticeable to
Yeah,
most people.
yeah, I was thinking, yeah.
And if they were to co-locate on a pole, say on one of Verizon's pole, would it be an additional piece of equipment that then is hung off that in some fashion?
Yeah, there'd have to be a separate shroud, and then I don't know if they could go inside that same antenna that's on the very top or not.
I never heard of a cantenna before, but I can tell you I'll be using that in a sentence quite often.
Neither had I. Neither had I. And it's really, it's
Makes
like a lot
sense.
of the stuff that
Budget
comes down from the
presentation
state, it comes and gets to us really quickly. And suddenly we've got, all right,
Antennas.
you've got 90 days to figure this out, guys.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on? So we did that. The council passed the ordinance. We passed it as an emergency ordinance. ACD is playing nice in the sandbox. And our downtown residents and Hope College students want this. I would venture to say that there probably aren't very many wired telephones in Hope College dorms anymore.
Well, so Hope College has been, those dorms, for as long as these kids have been coming back and forth and everybody's got a cell phone in their hands, they've had no cell coverage in the dorm?
They may have some cell coverage in there, but it's limited to the point where they get complaints about it. So unlike my kids, they're streaming video and whatever on their phone all the time. Well, if they have a limited connection or poor connection, they're not going to be able to do
They
that.
should be studying anyway. A cell phone.
Because
Everybody's got
that's
a
what
phone in their hand, for
you did that
God's
all the
sake.
time at Hope, Jay.
Library had it.
Yeah.
Well, not when I was there, but they,
Yeah, right.
but, yeah.
So you've heard?
So I heard. There is a library at Hope, I heard. And a chap?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
So that's
I
kind
like
of
the
the.
Audubon book in the basement.
Yeah, there you go.
It's beautiful.
There are opportunities. I reviewed one of the ones. There are probably opportunities where these can be hidden within decorative lighting as well. With the cast decorative light poles that we've got throughout the historic district, we may actually make it look worse, trying to match
Yeah.
some kind of a decorative pole.
Frankenpole.
Throughout, there's also mid-block poles in every block, right? So
The regular lighting.
regular lighting in every block, so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can make that. Is there an action item here?
Well, thanks for
Yeah, thanks for
working
telling
on that.
us.
I
Yeah,
think
really.
the
Yeah.
city is better off for having some aesthetic control than none. That's,
Yeah, and Grand Rapids came very close. They actually tabled the ordinance the first time around and I think they had 1 week to meet again and had to pass an emergency ordinance, or it was wild, wild west.
yeah.
Because at that point, if we don't have any of the local ordinance, they can come in
just
and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
So, luckily, we're not in that boat.
No, well, thank you.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. Were
Thank
there any
you.
other questions?
Nope, I think
You want to be the
Right,
new, you want to be the other staff liaison to the Historic District Commission? It's fun
think-
stuff, you have to admit.
I think I'm good at this point.
Have a good one.
yeah, good night.
Okay, next item is, last week we had a visit from Ellen Higgins, who's the Certified Local Government Coordinator and Community Outreach Coordinator, which is an interesting combination. He's a pretty young guy. He's got about 10 years' experience, I think, mostly in planning kinds of activities. I think in the past, there hasn't been a lot of conversation between the CLG and the local units on just about anything except when there's a grant process and there's an opportunity for some of the CLG funding. That was ramped up a little bit, and Grace's, you may remember, some of you anyway may remember Grace's response. She got an evaluation from the CLG and then she responded, well, that person's no longer there. But that was an attempt to begin to kind of ramp up CLG's engagement with the communities. And they're talking about, on roughly a 4-year cycle, they want to evaluate what's going on in each CLG community. So that essentially was our 4-year evaluation. We talked a little bit about their response to the evaluation and the recommendations they made, our response back to them. And Alan's first comment was we were being pretty aggressive about it. And he appreciates the direction, but doesn't expect that sort of aggressiveness, and particularly the survey efforts that were identified in that response. He is in the process of putting out 2 things either this month or next month. One of those is a coordination opportunity with the CLG office where they may assist on some survey work and maybe even do some of the survey work, but they're developing what that is, and he's going to be sending out something to the CLGs in the next month or so. That may give us an opportunity to get some, I'll say, free services from them, or at least we've got $5,000 in the budget for survey type of work. If you remember Grace's estimate, she was figuring about $20,000 for a survey, intensive level survey, that would get you about 100 properties surveyed, and it would take about 18 months. He looked at that and said, well, maybe it's a year process, and maybe it's 15,000 rather than 20,000. So he was saying it looked like it was maybe on the conservative or high side, depending on how you want to look at it. But he's sounding interested in helping out with all across the state. And he's on a trek around the state meeting all the CLGs right now. The other thing they're working on is the annual report is going to be due in another probably 6 or 8 weeks. And they're working on a new format for that. And they're trying to create a format that can be then sort of additive. So during that 4-year cycle of their looking at what's going on in each community, the information you submit annually will then be accumulated and become the basis of their evaluation and report. So they're trying to streamline it a little bit and have more interaction in the process with the communities. So I don't know, he's got a long list of other things that he's trying to accomplish with the CLG, so I hope he can do it. We'll see. It's kind of a bureaucracy there, and we'll see what can get through. But it was a very positive interaction. We took a quick tour around. He's pretty impressed with Holland. This was his first time here.
Is he from Detroit?
He's actually he was in southern Indiana. He works out of Lansing, but he was in southern Indiana, I think, for that 10-year position. Okay.
So Phil, when you talk about survey work, are we talking about maybe some hit and miss properties that are historic that we could incorporate and provide some gut protection to? Are we thinking about maybe some additional blocks or chunks of blocks with some historic homes that we would be contiguous to the historic district?
Yeah. Can I come back to that?
Of course.
Are you going to stick to the end? I'll come back to that.
Yeah, of course.
I do want to talk about surveying. Otherwise, I think everything was positive. He's going to be sending us some materials that may help us understand a little more what the opportunities are with CLG, and even a copy of the agreement that we must have signed 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or whatever. So it was a very positive meeting. Let me jump to what do I have next? Yeah. Okay. The downtown, there are several different survey activities we could do. We talked a little bit about it last time. One is looking at, there's a National Register, Downtown National Register District. It's looking at that, identifying properties that are no longer there or properties that have been modified since the National Register was adopted. And we could make some changes to the National Register District, or at least evaluate whether we want to or not. As I was looking at that, I also said there was the 1988 survey, general level survey that was done, reconnaissance level, that was done of all of the city. But I was focused on this area. This is the National Register District is roughly this, right in here. But this is all what is now within the Downtown Development Authority. It's what is being called, referred to as downtown. There's downtown north, and I mean there's some sub areas within that, but it's all downtown. So I took a look at the inventory for that downtown area and identified, this is really directly to your question, Jay, there were 508 properties that were identified in that area in the survey back in '88. 165 of those have been demolished. Means there's 343 that remain. Now, in some cases, there's a new building on some of those demolished sites and so forth. But of the 165 that were demolished, 66 were identified in the survey, the '88 survey, as it would be a good idea if we did additional research on those. So we've sort of lost the potential of those 66 historic properties, but of the 343 that remain, there are 79 of those that were indicated back in '88 that could benefit by additional survey.
Can you give me an example of 1 or 2 of those buildings? Where are you? What are we talking about here?
We're talking about buildings that aren't right in the core, some of those.
So say for instance, the old West Michigan Furniture Office, which is on 8th Street, you know, it's now Padnos.
Oh, yeah.
Would that be a building that would be in that, it's not in the historic district?
It would be within there.
But it's historically significant.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good example.
Yeah.
I don't know that specifically. I don't know if they ever went after a National Register listing for that. They may have. But that's the kind of building.
Okay.
I can pass this around. This is, everything in blue in here is in the National Register District. Everything that's yellow has been demolished. And the rest of those, where there is an X at the end, the rest of those are those that were identified as being worthy of additional research. So if I take that 100 properties that was talked about, I can look at this and say, well, there's 79 that were already identified. We might even say maybe some others because of age and so forth. Maybe there's others to add to that list. So maybe we could get up to 100 properties there. But if you look at the existing historic districts, we've got 31 non-contributing buildings in the historic district. Some of those could be updated. Some of those still would be non-contributing, but some of those could be updated. And Grace put together a list of those about a year ago, I guess.
Yeah.
So there's some work that could
Right.
be done there.
I think we even reviewed it
We did.
as a commission at some point and weighed in.
Did you come to a conclusion?
No.
We
You
did
guys
not. It
agree?
was more educational
I guess I
than,
answered really
Right.
emphatically.
But I remember that conversation, well, a guy next, you know where mine live, and that little red house right next door, that was built, I think, in the 40s, and in '88 it wasn't qualified.
Yeah.
Now, it
Correct.
potentially could be, even though it's non-contributing, but could it be contributing now? And would that allow those 30-some homeowners that they were in the historic district to be able to get the tax credit if it ever comes along? So the good reason why you want to be added into the historic district would be that 25% deal on your project. I mean, I did that at my house a long time ago, and it was a phenomenal deal. And if we can't, I think when we get that, that's got to be we got to let
Market
people
the
know.
daylights out of that.
Market the daylights out of that. Because that's one reason why someone would say, yeah, I will voluntarily come on into the historic district and participate in that, because it's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
Really, why else would somebody, I mean, it's a marketing thing for sure.
Yeah.
And you raise a question in my mind, and I don't know the answer, but if you're over 50 years old, the house is over 50 years, and you're within a historic district, might you all already qualify?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that, but anyway.
That's a really good question.
With or without our
Yeah.
Yeah, we were starting to talk about that, and then we were starting to go property by property and weighing in collective opinions, and we didn't come to consensus or conclusion on it.
We also talked about new districts or adjacent, adding adjacent.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
that
all
gets
the same
to
copies.
sort of where do we put our funds? I could do additional, take an additional look at the 88 survey and say, I don't have a map of our existing districts, but I could take a 200-foot perimeter around the edges of that district and say, are there additional homes there that should be part of existing districts? That's a different approach. Or, the CLG folks apparently showed some interest in Grace's suggestion that the greenhouse neighborhood might be an area to look at. I've had somebody from Lawndale, Elmdale.
Yeah,
That's another.
beautiful area,
Yes.
whether it's
Yeah,
historic.
so
it's-
there are other places.
Yeah.
Challenge is just how do you get to it? And how do you
We're gonna
afford
need
it?
a bus trip.
Well,
Yeah, we talked about.
We're gonna need a
bridge-
bus trip.
Like almost bridge districts, like areas that bridged together too, between the greenhouse and Keppel. There were a couple.
so the last three items on this really are, how do we get into this survey piece? I don't know what you've done within the place to start seems to be within the district and finishing up what you started already in that conversation on non-contributing buildings within the district. That seems like a logical first step, and that, if we had a warm day, that could be a nice walking tour.
Yeah.
To be. Then after that, I'd go to the National Register District. I wouldn't hold out, this is my own perspective on this, I wouldn't hold out a lot of optimism that there would be much support for a local district downtown. So to the extent we might identify a number of properties downtown, I'm not sure that some of the powers that be there that, would be real enthusiastic about it. But we should at least, in my mind, it's just as important to identify them and recognize them and begin to promote all of that as it is to ultimately try to get it under some sort of ordinance control. So it's really a question of, where do you want to go? Does that seem logical to kind of wrap up the non-contributing and then move to either downtown or we could go perimeter of the district?
I think what drove some of the conversation last time too was right when they were demolishing that building that's between 7th and 8th on the east side of College. There was a brick building by,
Yeah, the
remember?
5 story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it
No,
was just
south of that,
gone.
but
It was,
It's the new home, really.
Yes.
yeah. And then there was also, there was concern too about how the project with Pillar Church went too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did start in the neighborhoods, so we did start with the non-contributing properties. I don't honestly know if you could find any of the work we did. Like, I know that we reviewed papers or forms
Yeah.
that Grace had put together, and there were even thumbnail pictures of the properties. Like, that's what we were reacting to. We didn't do a walking tour.
Right.
No, I think we talked about either taking a bus or taking a walking tour.
Yeah.
Right.
And possibly as simply as voting on
Wasn't
each
there a
one.
map too that had like
Yeah.
color-coded, like which ones were
But I don't-
contributing?
so I guess we could
Yeah,
look
there was
back
a
and see
code.
if it was in
Yeah.
meeting minutes.
These
or
are
not.
probably the sheets you were.
Yep.
were
That
working
looks
on.
familiar, yeah.
So you
And
have
the colors sort of coordinate to a map that
Yeah,
has lots
I
of
have a-
stickers. And,
Okay.
I see the map
But-
in my mind's eye, yeah.
I'd be more comfortable looking at these houses and making determinations than I would going downtown and picking and choosing among.
I think it would be a good starting point for the commission too.
Yeah.
Like that's less controversial, more our wheelhouse. So
They're
yeah.
within the district already,
right.
so what they can do with it, there is some constraint on them in a sense. But, yeah, okay.
We owe it, but I think you could pitch that as we owe it to them if this
Tax credits?
tax credits come out, we owe it to them to let them know that that's available to them, don't you think?
The people that are
Yeah.
I mean, that can be the
Yeah.
reason for
Yes.
pitching it and getting it.
And just my personal, I mean, I feel like transitioning to other neighborhood studies would be more, and then you build to the downtown.
Yeah.
But I don't know how others do it.
I do too, although I guess I have to say I was surprised when I did that and highlighted.
How
I
many
was
big lots
surprised
there
how
are.
many of them are residential, so I get,
Mm-hmm.
as downtown has evolved, but downtown and Freedom Village and Hope College, all of those have had huge impacts on residential structures, but that's over a 31-year period too, so. I mean,
But still a significant number, and the fact that there were so many on your list that were ones that had warranted a second look perhaps, and we just don't have that opportunity anymore. And so when it's onesie twosie, I think people don't think about it as impactful as what that shows.
And there were some pretty significant buildings within that. I don't know if you remember the church on the corner of Central and 9th Street, the southeast corner of that.
Oh, the old First Reformed,
I don't remember what it was. It was still here when I got
across from what was then the bowling alley.
here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So there were
That was
some
a
Now it's
beautiful,
Park.
that was First Reformed Church before they
Yeah.
built up
That's
on
Park.
Michigan
Mhm.
Avenue.
Okay.
Sorry, what's the blue again?
Those are
Gone.
National Register.
Oh,
Blue's National Register.
Oh.
District.
Yellow is gone.
Yellow's gone.
I've heard stories about Van Ralte's home. I don't ever remember seeing it, but I was on Van Ralte, and I guess it was quite a place, but it just fell into disrepair and got torn down. Or by the soccer fields at Hope College had.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think Elton Bruns will go to his grave fussing about that. He has a whole chapter in the whole book about that.
What a nice home.
Because it was, I think Erdman's family bought it and gave it to the college, and they just couldn't keep it up in those days.
Thanks, Phil.
So, yeah.
Did we give you enough feedback?
I think so. Part of it is, yeah, I think so, partly because I've got to see what Alan comes out with his collaborative effort.
Right.
How exactly he frames that.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be something where we can get some intensive level research
Mhm.
done. That's not something we're going to have time for.
Yeah.
No, that would be great if that's something that
So that may
helps
help.
out.
So, yeah, thank you. That's good. I think that's really it. That's all I have.
It,
All right.
then that takes us to the end of the agenda. So,
Yay.
motion to adjourn, or Kim has something to.
The one thing that you didn't address was city greenhouse update.
Oh, that's right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kim and Andrew and
Better
I
game.
were in on a
We don't
meeting.
passion projects.
I'm with you.
I know. I'm speaking to you.
We were involved in a meeting, today's Tuesday, last week, talking about the greenhouse. And city manager has asked staff to put a process together that will take us from sort of where we are now, which is the grow house is under construction. It will be completed in December sometime. There probably will be limited use as they shift everything over to the grow house. There'll be limited use. Probably by the time we get to tulip time, that building will be vacant. And there is no city use that's been identified for that structure. At the same time, the city's made a commitment to Evergreen Commons that they will end up with that property, the triangle piece at the greenhouse is sitting on. That's fine with Evergreen Commons, except they don't want the greenhouse. As long as it's got the historic designation, they have no interest in it. And I suspect probably even if it didn't have the designation, they've come to a conclusion that they don't want to deal with that structure. So the direction that we talked about last week is a process that will take a look at, that will identify a small group and then a workshop group, which will be a much broader group, that will begin to look at possible relocation sites for the greenhouse, either all or some portion of the greenhouse, and what are the possible uses in any particular relocation. So I'll use an example. There's one idea that has come up that I think some of the parks people like, that is relocate the tropical house, which is the most ornate piece of the greenhouse facing Central Avenue, relocate that to Centennial Park. There's a connection between historic connection between Greenhouse and Centennial Park, so you can begin to tell a story, a historical story about that. And they think they have some idea of the kinds of uses that it might be put to in Centennial Park. Well, I can come up with another dozen or so similar kinds of opportunities on other public sites, most of them within the parks. So the conversation we had was intended to have Parks representation, Parks Commission representation. The person wasn't available, but it did have park staff there. So the notion is between Historic District Commission members, Parks Commission members, city staff, we'll go through a workshop process that will try to identify all of those, try to come up with a scenario that seems to make sense. In that process, we'll get lots of input. The intent is to have it, I won't say exactly like the waterfront because that was a pretty extreme example of input, but have a lot of engagement in the process to identify what those options might be and where and ultimately how much the cost is. So the idea is to get to a concept or a couple of concepts, share those with City Council and see where Council is on it, where they think they want to put their dollars, what makes the most sense to them, and then ultimately carry through with that scenario, I hope. The meeting last week was really to get sort of an introduction to Historic District Commission and the Parks Commission, just to say this is the process we're talking about. We want to go to City Council so that they can endorse this process before we start on it. So we're looking at a date probably in December or January, depending on when Keith can get us on the council agenda, in a study session to just have this discussion about process and how we're trying to take it forward. It's moving forward with a presumption that the city has no use for the structure currently in its current location. There's an understanding that from the studies that have been done to date that we could be anywhere from, depending on how much of the structure is saved and where it's saved, where it's relocated, and so forth, we could be anywhere from $300,000 to $800,000 in a sort of budget for that kind of activity. So part of this process is to get our arms around what it really takes to make something that is usable in the end and is functional for everybody. So that's the update. It was about an hour's meeting, I think, just to say here's the process we're working through, or proposing to work through, and ultimately we want to get the council on.
You mentioned that in that meeting there was the street department or the Parks Department said, yeah, we could conceive of some uses that could be. Are they related to taking those plants that they have to put away in the wintertime, using that as kind of a greenhouse in the wintertime and keep it heated and do what it's doing up there?
I would guess no, not using it the way it's used now. Would they put some of those plants in it? Perhaps, but I think they're thinking more of how do they get community use, more active use in Centennial Park or wherever this might land. And what are
like
those
a private
kinds of
party
uses?
kind of thing, or
Yeah, I
maybe
thought of it
you're
as a
putting
revenue
gazebo.
generator.
Okay.
And if you tie into snow melt, I mean, there are all kinds of things that that there are lots of places it could go, but I just think that the city, there are ways to repurpose it in terms of a revenue generator for the city. And one thing that Andy Kenyon's talked a lot about has been coming up with sort of a plan for Centennial Park, especially because
I think that's important.
because Centennial Park is a historic and within the historic district, so to parallel path what's happening with the greenhouse, it can't be done without a plan for, even if it doesn't go in Centennial Park, it can't be done without a plan for what's happening with Centennial Park too, at least in my mind.
There is something to be said about, I would hate to have us go through another Wizard of Oz thing there.
Yep.
But without absent any other plan about what could come or what couldn't go.
Right.
Now somebody's gonna, it could happen and say, well, let's put that thing. Well, what else you gonna put there? I mean, we're cluttering up this park.
And that's been I've not been quiet about my thoughts on cluttering up Centennial Park. Every time I turn, I say that, but it seems like there are lots of times where I'm like, why is there a stage thing there all of a sudden? Or there's half an arch for something that means nothing, and it does not look thought out.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice that window on the waterfront. There's not a building out there. And there's a couple little pavilions or gazebos, but I think it would add to that park. Really, I think it would be a nice addition over there.
You
That's
raise
the
a good
opportunity of
point.
this
Yeah,
process.
you raise a good point of why we need to go through that process,
Yeah.
because all I can see is Centennial Park, and there could be a far
See, and
better
I'm thinking
plan.
of Collin Park
We
at
haven't
the
even
corner
thought
of
about
it.
Somebody's
Holland
gotta
and Vinralty, that open
There are a lot of
space.
Yeah.
different
there
places,
was
certainly. yeah.
The thing I liked about it too is we talked about after the workshop, then I think Phil built in some time for synthesis of the ideas or to put together the most, I guess, the most consensus-based recommendation or option, and then it would come before us in as normal of a proposal as possible. So,
Right.
I mean, it is a historic district property, so we just asked that it would be put forward as an application. We'd review it in a
Yeah.
packet.
See what-
It wouldn't necessarily have to feel quite so unique. Like the Oz thing just felt like, I don't know, it felt like we didn't know what if we were approving, if we were not approving. So I think if the greenhouse could feel more clear in that regard, it would help the commission.
Help the Parks Commission too. I mean, they're sort of in the same spot.
Mhm.
Things are getting dropped in their parks.
Yeah, I get that feeling from Andy.
Are you looking for personnel to represent the historic?
Yeah, we've been talking a little bit about that since the meeting, how we're gonna
Okay.
run that. So I'm not sure yet. But yeah, I would go into this thinking nothing's a done deal, and your vote isn't, we're not assuming you're gonna support whatever comes out of this. I mean, it's gotta, you need to weigh in from a historic perspective on this.
And we can participate in the workshop and not have to recuse ourselves from the vote. Like
Right.
that may sound weird, but what if
Well,
one of our ideas is like the best idea?
It listed us though as participants,
It's-
right, in
yeah.
in Phil's proposed.
I guess I think it would just be nice for us to know clearly if we attend the workshop how much participation
Yeah,
or what
that's
we're
a-
allowed to
a good
say and
question.
not say.
Well, I really welcome the fact that we have an opportunity ahead of any decisions
Yeah.
being made that were a done deal, because I think the Wizard of Oz thing was unfortunate in that that ship sailed a long time before anything came before us, and then it was, quite honestly, it felt like it was shoved through in a way that if it were a homeowner trying to do that, I don't think it would have flown. So I think it did not feel very good.
Fair enough.
We did not feel like we couldn't execute the things that we were charged with
I agree.
executing. That was again, just thought. So I welcome the fact that we're involved so much more ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And I'm glad we're taking steps on this, because we've been talking about that greenhouse for
Mhm.
Oh,
3
wow.
years, man. About what to do, how to do it, do they want it, they don't want it.
It's not gonna hold well once it's empty. We saw that on Western Tool.
What's that?
Quickly.
Oh, quickly, once it's empty, all the glass gets.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Everything.
But
goes
when I
on.
think about using that for public space, and maybe that you're talking about 300 to 800 to get that up to handle that kind of thing, that's not going to be any small expense. So we got to make a really good pitch. If we want to do it, it's going to be a big pitch. I could get some money to maybe there's a grant involved in that. I don't know.
Well, and I really do think it could be a revenue generator. I mean, the
Yeah.
same way one of the things that we talked about was the same way that every time you want to do something on your home or I want to do something on my home, there's a permitting process involved that I need to slide money across the table for
That's
to
true.
improve my property.
Yeah, good
So
one.
I don't see that being a possible revenue generator to rent out for the city as being a negative thing.
Might justify the higher expense too, saying.
You think of how often the gazebo is used for
Oh my gosh.
weddings and photographs
Sure.
of all kinds. You put a facility like that with it, and maybe you've got the nucleus of something really cool.
Does all the glass have to be replaced? Is that,
I don't know about all of it.
Not all of it.
A significant amount of it.
okay.
Were you on the tour when we went, like the commission
don't
went?
think-
No, I went a different day.
No.
I didn't go the day before. But it struck me it's not safety glass. It's not glass that you
No.
could install now, so,
Yeah, the whole thing would have to be disassembled
all right.
and then reassembled.
And then could you reassemble old glass, or would you?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, we've got friends of ours who just went through this and renovated a greenhouse on their property that had been neglected and with no, I mean, they had some issues, but it was not as big of a challenge as if you were reconstructing a home.
Mhm. Okay.
Some more to come on that.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll let you know
Thanks, Ken.
when we're going to council on it. It'll probably be a relatively quick thing in a pre-council meeting or something, but I'll let you know when that is.
Thank you.
Did I miss anything else?
No, that was the only thing.
Okay,
All right, then
good. Thank you.
we're done. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes.